Bathroom Breaks and Bedtime Tales presents The Late Angela Marsh by Sebastian Winters. The nightmare always began the same way, not with darkness. Darkness was something you could reason with, something your eyes adjusted to eventually, something that thinned at the edges if you waited long enough. This was not darkness. This was weight. This was the specific and total compression of the world, deciding it was finished with you, pressing down from every direction at once. The first thing Angela was always aware of was that she could not expand her lungs to their full capacity because there was simply nowhere for them to go. Then came the smell. Earth and something older than earth. Wet wood, the particular cold that lived below the frost line, below the reach of any sun that had ever existed. Then came her hands. She always tried her hands first. In the dream, she had enough presence of mind to understand what had happened and enough horror to refuse to accept it, and so she pressed her palms upward against the lid and pushed with everything she had. The lid did not move. Not a creak of protest. Not even the dignity of resistance. Just absolute, immovable certainty pressing back against her palms, like the world had never intended to give her any more space than this, and had simply been tolerating her presence above it until now. She would turn her head. This was always the moment the dream became unbearable. Not the dark, not the cold, not even the lid, but turning her head and feeling the soil shift against her cheek. Loose, close, already there, already touching her, already intimate in a way that nothing had the right to. And she would understand, in the way you only understand things in dreams, with a totality that bypassed argument entirely, that the air was not going to last, that her body knew this before her mind did, that her lungs were already negotiating with mathematics that were not going to negotiate back. She would try to scream. Nothing came. She would try to roll over. She couldn't. Angela Marsh woke at 3 a.m. with her heart conducting itself like an orchestra falling down a staircase. She sat up. She pressed her fingertips together. Briefly, precisely, a small, private reset she had developed sometime in her 40s and never examined too closely. She smoothed the sheets on Gerald's side of the bed, even though Gerald had been in the ground himself for 6 years. Greenbrook Cemetery, Section 4. She sat in the dark and waited for her heart to finish its business. She had never told anyone about the dream. Not Gerald, not her sister Margaret, not her doctor. She was 71 years old, and she had been having this dream for 30 years. She had never once let it follow her out of the bedroom. She got up when it became clear sleep was finished, put on her robe, went downstairs, made chamomile, and sat at the kitchen table while the sky decided what color it was going to be. By the time it decided, she was herself again. Angela's house on Clearview Drive was the kind of house that reflected its owner so completely that visitors sometimes felt they were being assessed by the house itself. The floors were clean without being sterile. The surfaces held objects that were there for reasons. The guest bathroom contained good towels that existed for guests, which was their purpose, and which Berta, the cleaning woman, understood not to repurpose for anything else. Angela had told Berta this once, pleasantly and clearly, 7 years ago, and had never needed to say it again. The orchid on the third shelf of the living room bookcase wanted water every 9 days. Angela had a system. The orchid had responded to the system by being alive for 4 years, which she regarded as a mutual success. She had raised Jack in this house. Jack was 37 now and lived 40 minutes away in an apartment that made her privately insane, not because it was dirty exactly, but because nothing in it was where it should be. Several things were on the floor that had no business being on the floor, and he owned a grand total of 2 plates. 2! She had chosen not to say anything about the plates for 3 years, which she considered one of the great achievements of her later life. Jack called on Sundays. He visited on birthdays and Christmases, and occasionally on random Tuesdays when something had gone wrong at work and he needed her to feed him and not ask about it. And she did, which was, she understood, was its own kind of conversation. He was a good son. He had his father's jaw and her stubbornness, and a laugh that still surprised her sometimes. How much of Gerald was in it? She had written him a full page of instructions for the house while she was in hospital, typed complete sentences. The orchid, Berta's schedule, the location of the serving plates, which were not where a person would assume they were, and which she had seen him searching for at Christmas with the specific expression of a man who would rather die than ask. She did not write down anything about the dream. She had never written it down anywhere. Writing it down would give it a kind of permanence she refused to authorize. The surgery was routine. She had researched this word with the thoroughness she applied to everything until she was satisfied it meant what it claimed to mean: a hip replacement at 71. Her surgeon, Dr. Paulson, had done hundreds. He had the calm hands and the specific, confident boredom of a man for whom this particular miracle had become unremarkable, which was exactly what she wanted in a surgeon. Her heart was strong. Her blood work was good. She would be uncomfortable for a recovery period, and then she would not be. She would be able to walk without the thing her hip had been doing for 8 months that she had not mentioned to Jack because there was nothing he could do about it. Worrying him served no purpose. She ironed her nightgown before packing it. Jack drove her to the hospital on Tuesday morning. She sat in the passenger seat with her handbag on her lap and her coat correctly buttoned. She told him about the orchid. He said he knew. She said 9 days, not 8. He said he knew. She looked at him. He looked at the road. This was a form of love they had developed over 37 years. It worked well for both of them. At the hospital, he carried her bag to the room and stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking at things that were not her, which meant he was trying not to show her something. She straightened the items on the bedside table. She did not tell him about the dream. She had thought about it, in the abstract, in the way you think about things you will never do. She considered whether she should tell him, whether he should know that for 30 years his mother had woken at 3 a.m. with the weight of the earth on her chest and had sat alone at the kitchen table waiting for the sky to choose a color. She decided against it. It would only worry him, and he couldn't do anything about it. She would be fine. She was going to be fine. 9 days, she said. There's a note on the refrigerator. Mom. His voice did something small and complicated. He kissed her forehead. I'll be right here. She watched him go, smoothed the front of her hospital gown, pressed her fingertips together once, and waited. Going under was stranger than she had anticipated. She had prepared for unconsciousness the way she prepared for everything. Researched, categorized, and emotionally organized in advance so that the experience itself would find her ready. She had expected a kind of graceful dimming, a responsible exit. What happened instead was that the world became a tablecloth being pulled slowly from beneath her while she was still sitting at the table. She was aware of the lights above her, the specific cold of the room, someone saying her name in a professional, reassuring way. And then she was aware of something else, something underneath all of it, a sensation she had no category for, the feeling of a distance opening between herself and everything she had ever held in place by simply being present and awake and in charge. She thought about the orchid. 9 days. She thought about Jack's hands in his pockets. She thought about dirt, about cold, about her palms pressing against something that would not move. She tried to hold on to the lights. The lights did not hold. Jack sat in the plastic chair outside surgical recovery for 11 hours. His mother had made it clear no one was to enter her room until she was awake. One of the signs of a body in recovery from surgery was flatulence. Jack had never heard his mother's flatulence. Angela was determined he never would. He drank coffee from a machine that seemed engineered specifically to produce disappointment. He answered emails he didn't read afterward. He called his ex-wife, his business partner, and his mother's sister Margaret, who cried immediately and thoroughly, which somehow made it worse. He watched nurses move with the specific practiced efficiency of people who had learned not to telegraph anything in their faces or their pace. He tried to read their faces and their pace anyway. At hour 4, a nurse told him it was taking a little longer than expected. This happened sometimes, that Dr. Paulson would be out to speak with him. At hour 7, a different nurse brought him a cup of coffee that was not from the machine. She sat with him for 4 minutes without saying anything, which told him more than anything anyone had said. Dr. Paulson came out at hour 9. Jack heard everything he said. He retained the shape of it, the sounds, the ordering of the sounds, the way Paulson's hands were very still at his sides while he talked, which Jack understood was something they were probably taught. The meaning kept sliding away before he could hold it. He nodded at the right times. He asked one question. He didn't remember what, but Paulson answered it and put his hand briefly on Jack's shoulder. Then he was gone. Jack was left sitting in the plastic chair with a cup of cold coffee and the specific new silence of a person who has just been told something that has permanently divided their life into a before and an after. He walked to the parking garage. He found his car. He sat in it for 20 minutes, and then he called Margaret and said, "She's gone." Margaret made a sound that Jack had never heard a human being make before. He sat with the phone against his ear and stared at the concrete pillar in front of him. He did not cry because there was something in him that had locked, and he couldn't find the mechanism. He cried in the shower at 2 a.m. with the water running so no one could hear him, even though he lived alone. The house filled up on Thursday. Angela would have managed this better than it was being managed. Jack understood this the moment he walked in and found Margaret and Carol from next door with 3 women from Angela's book club moving through the kitchen with the slightly panicked efficiency of people who needed to be useful and weren't sure how. He told them where the serving plates were. He accepted casseroles. He shook hands and received embraces and said, "Thank you for coming, and she would have loved seeing you." And yes, she really was, until the phrases stopped meaning anything and became purely structural, something to fill the space where his mother used to be. Her orchid was on the third shelf. He had watered it. He had checked the note. 9 days. Her good wine glass was on the second shelf where she'd always kept it, the one she'd had for 20 years. It was the one she brought out for occasions she considered worth the risk of the good glass. He found himself standing in front of it. Then he found himself holding it. Then he found himself filling it. When he turned around, the room went quiet in the way rooms do when something is about to be said that everyone has been waiting for without knowing they were waiting. His face stopped working. He let it. "To my mom," Jack said. His voice broke cleanly in half on the third word. Nobody looked away. Nobody should have. 3 miles away, in Greenbrook Cemetery, Section 4, not even a crumb of freshly layered dirt above her stirred when Angela Marsh woke herself up with her own fart. She opened her eyes to the darkness and hoped that no one had heard.